Yeah, we're here. We are getting started with the fourth episode in our um, master trading series. And this series is all about how you go from being a new trader to a pro trader. That's it. There's three previous episodes in the series. We started out with Lucci, then we did Chris Cady, then we did Wall Street Jesus. So if you're watching this in the recording, which the vast majority of you are, go to our YouTube channel, check out that series. There's a playlist that's pinned to the homepage of the YouTube channel. Those are some great interviews. We've gotten some great feedback on that, and they kind of lay the foundation for some of what we're going to talk about today. But today also really stands alone as its own interview because every experience, every journey for these guys is different and distinct, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to each of them one by one. So joining me today is the infamous Ranchero Friedman. Ranch, say hello to everybody.
What's up?
So we're going to give a second or more than a second, a little bit of time for Ranch to give insight into his story, which is a big part about why we're doing this interview. But I wanted to frame it a little bit with why we named this episode "Becoming a Pro on Your Own," which is a weird thing to say because, Ranch, you had a number of licenses. You had like every license you can get, every FINRA license you can get. You clearly worked in the industry to a certain degree. You had a lot of exposure to the space. But when we talk really about your evolution as a trader, the turning points that had a huge impact on you, the learning experiences that you had, those were all experiences that you sought out on your own. That weren't like, it's not like you went through some like nice, dainty, formal education program, or that licenses really helped you a lot, in your journey. So let's start out this conversation, if you will, and let's go to, where you were at when you were maybe just getting into the game and before, starting to get licensed maybe, and just kind of give us a snapshot of what was going on for you then, how you were approaching things, what you're doing in space.
So I kind of always had been interested in markets from the time that I had heard stories about friends and neighbors who I grew up in my formative years outside of Chicago in the suburbs. And there were a lot of guys whose parents worked on the SIBO, the CME. There were some brokers mixed in there, et cetera. And I'd always heard stories about, why does Jim get to drive around and his family get to drive around in a new BMW every 2 years? And they're always like vacationing in Hawaii and all that kind of crap. Right. So it was like, oh, well, their parents are either, traders or investors. And, they bought Microsoft at like $1.25 and you know what I mean? Like stuff like that. And to me, it was always more about, there's like a very subtle trade-off between working hard and getting paid, right? Yeah. So the background I kind of grew up in was like, you work really hard, you just put your head down and you go. And I was like, okay, I get that, but I want to get paid for doing that, right? And then all along, everybody who ever talked to me was like, the market's a sucker's game and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. I know there's a way to do this. I've seen people around me who have made this kind of money. They're not necessarily, smarter than I am, whether in the right place, right time, whatever it was. So I kind of just was always fascinated and interested by that. So by the time I got to college and I had graduated, moved out to Colorado, I spent some really good quality time avoiding the real world by living up in the mountains. And I was a ski instructor and a fly fishing guide and did all that kind of really fun stuff. But then got to a point where, it was just like, hey, you're broke. You have no future doing this unless you want to live in a blue van down by the river, as Chris Farley used to say. So, it was kind of like, all right, I have to try and figure something else out. I want to try and go back to this, to this market thing. So in 93 or 94, I can't remember when it was, I went to work for a discount retail brokerage firm. I didn't have a formal pedigreed education. I didn't have ins to Wall Street or Chicago, the SIBO, any of that stuff. I didn't know anything about the real mechanics of how things worked, other than, hey, if you want to get involved and be in this, becoming a broker is the way to do it. And unbeknownst to me, that this industry is pretty brutal from the standpoint of most people don't get paid salaries, especially if you're somebody who is generating any kind of money. You kind of have to fly on your own. So the brokerage world was kind of like, this firm that I went to work for is no longer in business. Some people, some older guys, some other boomers in here might recognize it. It was called Oldie Discount, OLDE, started by the guy name of Ernie Oldie. And their whole thing was, they had a desk of analysts and traders, and the analysts would cover certain stocks. And back in the day, you had bid-ask spreads that were unmitigated. They were unfettered. So you would have these companies that the analysts would cover, and then our traders would make a market in, and you have a bid-ask spread of, let's say, $2 or $3 or $4. So the whole thing was, hey, if you, as a broker, it's just like, you call your clients, I want you to buy 1,000 shares of, Dell computer at the market. You couldn't take a limit order. If you took a limit order, it cut the difference between the bid-ask spread, and that's how the desk made the money, right? So if your bid-ask spread is $4 and you buy 1,000 shares at the market, it's a $4,000 profit for the desk, right? Or if it's a dollar spread, it's $1,000. And as the broker, you got a piece of it, right? So, what was interesting about that environment that I learned quickly was, I thought like the pathway to doing this was, I need to get licensed, and becoming licensed is going to teach me how I'm going to make this money, right? So it revealed itself very quickly. The environment was painful. So it was 6:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday, and then Saturdays from 9 to 1. And you had to make 300 dials a day. And if you didn't, like every week you were evaluated, and they had, something on the phone, then they spit out a piece of paper that said, here's how many dials you made today. And if you weren't hitting your numbers, they were like, here's the box, pack your shit, get out of here. And most of the guys that I worked with in that environment were just assholes to begin with. And if any of you ever worked for Oldie, you either were one of the assholes or you understand what I'm talking about. So it's a little shout out there. So the whole thing was, it was just a joke. And it was like, well, I quickly realized how much money that you were generating in commissions. And I quickly realized, I'm a monkey generating commissions for a trading desk. How do I get on the trading desk? Because I don't want 20% of this commission. I want the 80, or I want the 100% of it. How do I get on the other side of that equation? So it was kind of like, I couldn't figure it out. And then it was like more licensing to climb higher in the brokerage hierarchy, right? So there's like a series 8, which allows you to be a branch manager, and a 24, which is a registered options principal. And it's all just about rules, regulation, what you can't do, as opposed to here's how you make money doing this shit, right?
Yep.
So that was my entry into that world. I left that world in 1998 or so, just because I had grown sick and tired of that grind and not really getting paid. So I took, some of my own money and I started making my own money work. And I got to 2001, just before the 9/11 tragedy. And I had built up for my age and my experience. And I was simply just a one-way trader. And it was just like a lot of people get caught, stocks only go up, right? So I got caught in that mentality, and I went from a lot to a little, and then found myself in a situation where my marriage was coming apart, and things took a radical change. So what I learned through all of that obviously was like, you can just bang your head on the wall all you want for all these licenses, but if you don't recognize where you're at and who you are, it doesn't matter, right? None of that stuff matters. It certainly didn't matter in my case. So the credentialing this far down the road means nothing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So
you could at today.
You could pass a FINRA exam that, you know, you could sort of answer all sorts of random questions that they had designated as important about options and, you know, pricing or something like that. But in terms of understanding really how they worked, how to trade them, you didn't have that understanding at the time.
Yeah,
so
and it's kind of messed up because the licensing is just for your firm or whoever's representing you to say this individual has this credential and can answer these questions, but the individual still doesn't have any idea how to trade, right? Maybe, right. I mean, investing, sorry to say it, but you know, the easiest way to do it is to wait for a pullback, and you either have a job where you're making a lot of money and you get to over time just throw money into a specific investment or group of investments, and time will take care of returns, or you're not making as much and you need to hustle and figure out a way to grow your pile. And if you don't know the mechanics of how to do that, it's very difficult. You can't catch up to the people who are making more money and have more time, right? It's a skewed equation.
Yeah. And I mean, we have previous webinars and conversations where you've gone real in depth that are much more sort of psychologically oriented, the subject matter of those conversations, where you go real in depth to where you were at that rock bottom point after 9/11 and everything coming apart. And, you know, I think, and to anybody who is interested in that and who is really curious about like, how do you come back from a really brutal beat? Like, you should go look at those conversations with Ron. Just look, you know, search Ron Friedman in our YouTube. They will come up, and there's a lot there.
There's a lot of crying and country music involved.
I mean, you went, you know, to say that you were starting from zero is, you know, that's true on a financial level, on a psychological level, on an emotional level. I mean, you had just gotten blindsided on pretty much every level.
It was not fun. It was 5 years of darkness.
Yeah. So then you're in that state. How, like, I remember in our, you know, in the lead up to this, you said somewhere in your head, you said, I want to give this another shot. I'm going to do it, you know, right. I think I can do this. What did you do next? Like, how did you take a forward step?
Well, so I had, you know, I was working in the medical device arena in sales and business development. And that part of my world was going well, but it was still just a struggle, you know, day to day to pull the money together. So in my head, I was like, listen, I've done this before, but this time I need to figure out how to do it where if 0 or 00 hits on the roulette wheel, that one-time event, that thing that could never happen, that black swan event that wipes everybody out, there has to be a way to be able to put yourself in a situation where if that happens, that you find yourself landing on your feet, and not only just landing on your feet, but actually coming out of it, you know, in really, really good shape.
Yeah.
I had been through countless courses past when I had left the brokerage world, because I was still searching for a way. I was like, I know there's a way. I had a buddy who did well on some lotto options. That's kind of what got me hooked. And I was like, well, I mean, I know lottos that's just a roll of the dice. It's going to be a hit or a miss. I don't see that being sustainable. Maybe you hit once, but then what do you do after you hit once? Like, do you keep, you know, do you take your pile and then just keep throwing out there and hoping every 10th one is a home run? So I, you know, just through the power of the interwebs, just, you know, kept looking, went through, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 different courses, like one a year, most of them based on options, because I knew I didn't have a large amount of capital, and I knew I needed leverage, but I couldn't get leverage without having any money. So I spent, instead of saving, you know, the money and putting it into savings and brokerage, I was spending that money on education. I was looking for, where am I going to find this holy grail, right? Where is this spark going to get going? And these option courses back in the day were like, I don't know, $3,000, $4,000. Like it was a lot of money to somebody like me who was, living hand to mouth, right? Just, everything going out the door for kids, for rent, spousal support, those things, right?
Yeah.
And then, you'd get like just volumes, big, huge binders of crap, right? And remember that, like the tapes, and and then it evolved to CDs, right? And then it evolved to like MPEGs. You know what I mean? Like the evolution of the education piece, but nothing stuck. Nothing was clicking. And what I realized was it was because the people who taught the information weren't necessarily even doing the trading. They were just people that came out of the securities industry that worked for these firms like Fidelity or, Schwab or whoever it was. And they just broke off and they're like, I'm just going to go run my own education thing. And they're just teaching you the outline, but they're not teaching you how to actually trade. So I had to find somebody who actually was running, something where they were actually trading. And I came across a guy he passed away, I think a couple of years ago, was a market maker on the Philly, and ran a big book back at the same time when I was a retail broker. So I wanted to learn from his experience because he's the one saying, okay, now here's an area where you buy, here's an area where you sell. So I spent, I would say like a good 3 years just focused on trying to understand things like technical analysis. Where's a good place to buy? Why am I looking at whatever particular strike as a good strike to buy? Where am I going to be able to make the money? So I really had to, to pay my dues there again.
Just you were learning like one-on-one. Were you learning one-on-one from him? Like what was the content?
It was a combination of one-on-one. And then there was also a combination of, he had, a chat room, and, the chat, I don't even remember what the chat room cost back then. It was probably, probably similar to what things are right now. It was probably, I don't know, it was like, $100 a month or $150 a month, something like that. I don't remember. Right. And then there were, I could do breakouts with him. And I could, there were times when I first started where he wasn't charging me to do it. And then later on, he was like, hey, like, we're going to get more involved. We're going to do one-on-one stuff. I'm going to charge you to do this. Right. So I was like, okay, like we'll go in. But it was worth it. And from all of the crap that I experienced before, I was able to tell the difference between this is crap and this is actually material and something that I can use to actually help me.
Yeah.
And then we became friends, and once we became friends, it was kind of like, then we just had an open dialogue, and, then it was more of like it was like a true mentoring program past that point. Like after I had, paid and hung around for all that time, it was finally just like, he's like, I like you. I see you're dedicated to all this. Let's just, we'll drop all the other shit and I'll just continue to coach you from here. So that was where I kind of came up with the framework for the foundation for trading the post. And then my next evolution beyond that was getting Lucci, and Lucci was the one who brought me to the point. Like I didn't know who you guys were when I found you on the internet. Like I was like, okay, this Wall Street Jesus guys has an unusual option activity room. I had spent some time in the Nigerian room. Mm-hmm. There's another trader out there by the name of Andrew Keene. I'd spent some time in his room, and just over time, as you do this enough, you see so many of these guys either come and go, or what their game is. And a lot of the game can be like, we don't care about each individual. What we care about is getting enough members in here and doing our thing. And if you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't, kind of thing. Right.
Right. Yep.
So that was kind of what led me, to keep looking. And when I came across Jesus, I was really in the mindset of, I was like, okay, I like the unusual option activity aspect of it, and I'm looking for somebody who's more refined. So when I found Jesus, I didn't know who Lucci was. I didn't understand the structure of all of this. And then when I came into the room, I thought that the UOA board was a crystal ball, right? I was like, oh shit, Miss Cleo's riding on my shoulder. All I got to do is throw money at these sweeps that come in. So Lucci, either you or Lucci, somebody sent me an email like, hey, join the master class. And I'm like, who the hell are these guys? Like, I'm done buying these classes. Like, you guys are full of shit, right? Was my initial, takeaway from it.
Right.
And then when Lucci started talking about reading tape, and I was like, what the hell is he talking about, reading tape, right? And then when I listened to one of these broadcasts is when I was like, all right, I'll put money in. You guys offered hey, win a scholarship.
Scholarship. That was when we were doing the scholarships.
Yeah. So I wrote in, and you responded back to me, and you were like, oh, like, nice letter, fuck you, you didn't win. So I was like, okay, that's cool. So
I like to think maybe I used a little bit better language than that, but
I might still have the email. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you threw a fuck you in there.
Oh shit! I'm gonna get called out. All right, respect. Well played.
So I was like, fine, I'm gonna pony up for this, but like, this is the last one I'm ever doing. And then when I got in there and Lucci started doing level 2, like the light bulb went on immediately to me with everything that I had been trained before with understanding and learning how to find good areas, levels of support and resistance, and why, and then taking that information and applying it to reading tape. And all of a sudden it was like shit got turbocharged. And I had always been in the background using a long-term approach because I was working. I was trying to work and trade. You can't sit in front of a screen when you're working. So I had to have a longer term, slower approach to it. And then all of a sudden Lucci shows up, I learn tape. And then all of a sudden my returns in performance start going through the roof because I'm able to combine what I already know with what he taught me. And then that was kind of the beginning of when I made the transition from doing what I was doing to just being able to trade full time.
Yeah. Thank you for taking us through that. I mean, I think something that you really highlight in your story is that it's something that we try to hit on, and it's hard for us to put this statement out there because we're obviously biased, and it kind of benefits us as a service provider in this space. But there's so many people, who are trying to break in and trying to do this independently and professionally, and they spend 90% of their time and energy trying to learn a lot of these concepts on their own, like you said, reading options books, going through these sorts of binders, whatever the equivalent of that is now, going down YouTube channel rabbit holes and stuff like that. And instead, I think something that hasn't changed in the history of trading, it's been a constant, is that most traders learn through a mentorship or an apprenticeship model. People who really make it learn through that sort of direct kind of immersive experience and contact with somebody, and they just find somebody who has the experience and who can explain things in a way that makes sense, that resonates. It's not always going to be us, the people who are within our company, but and so do you think that that's true, that was key to your experience to finding, these kind of two key figures, this market maker and Lucci, who could put the pieces together?
I don't think I would have been able to get to where I'm at if it wasn't for these two individuals and me recognizing what they were good at and how I could apply it. And what I discovered was when I was doing that was, wow, it's so broad and there's so many moving parts that if I can take this and I can piece it together. So if I can take piece A and take piece B and put them together, it was like, it was rocket fuel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would, and it's not to say, oh my God, I found the Holy Grail. It was just like, oh shit, like I just found a way to boost my performance that I didn't know that I was missing. It wasn't like it was like a new thing or a new system. It just took me to be able to connect the dots and piece it together. And once I did, I was like, oh shit, now I see. Right.
You had edge. You had real, you had real sustainable, consistent edge.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you, let me think about the question that I want to ask you. I mean, when you were at that, when you say retail traders coming into the market now, and you get a decent bit of exposure to retail through, or when I say retail, so newer traders, right? Coming in through your service, your product, Trading the Post. Newer people, where do you see them going wrong from the vantage point of everything that you just laid out in terms of your learning process? Like, what are the things that stick out to you most?
So going too quickly and placing big trades in the wrong spots. So what winds up happening is newer traders will come in, and I don't mean it disrespectfully towards any of the new or younger guys who have hit home runs, because there are plenty of guys out there that have done it, but a lot of them haven't lived through a real down cycle yet, right? And that will separate the wheat from the chaff. I don't know when it's coming, but it's going to happen. It always does, right? It's going to cycle at some point. Right. So, the question is, do you know how to handle it? And then the other part is, newer traders, what will happen is they'll come in, they'll learn some things, they'll get excited, they'll place some trades, and they'll place the wrong trade at the wrong place and get smoked. And then when the right opportunity comes around, they don't have the confidence because they got torched initially, right?
Mm-hmm. With too much size, or just like they just generally got.
Yeah, it kind of differs, right? So I'll see some traders come in and they think they have it and they do really well right off of the bat. And then all of a sudden they'll either forget something, or like this time of year comes around, September, October, and September and October are always, can be really difficult. And people don't, if you don't have historical precedents as any kind of grounds or basis to look back on, you don't know it, or you haven't experienced it, you can very easily walk right past that and not see it, right? Like it's not their fault. It just happens because you haven't lived through it yet, right?
Yeah.
And you come in, and for example, like on this little pull right here, right? This pullback in the market, you had guys that were doing so well for so long. And when you hit some turbulence like this, what happens is they're like, listen, I made this money before, I'm just going to throw some more money at some spots where I think I should be doing. And what happens is they'll start with like a big position, and then they start toning down, continuing to look for the right spot. But instead of waiting for the quality setup or the quality company at the right discounted price, they're so beat up by the time that the price gets there, they're shell shocked and they can't place the trade. And then all of a sudden it runs away, and everybody's like, high five, it's fucking happy hour at 1:00. Let's go. I'm out. Right. They don't get to participate in that. And then that grinds them down more.
So they get angry, they get pissed, and it's just a downward cycle. Yeah. I mean, I think what you're hitting on is something that Jade spoke to in the last episode of this, is that like newer traders tend to sort of live and die by their last trade, or by their last 5 or plus or minus 5 or 10 trades. Whereas pros have a much wider, longer term perspective. They have much longer time horizon. They have a deeper memory, and they know that whatever's happened in the last day or the last 2 days doesn't make or break them, as a trader. They have more staying power. Do you think that like sort of long-term confidence, I guess, or perspective for you, that ability to zoom out, did that really kick in once you had learned tape and those skill sets from Lucci? Was that something you had before? Like, when did that come out?
It's a good question. Because I had been beaten up so badly, my first and foremost thought was, what I have is small and it's precious, and I have to protect it, and I have to learn how much I can risk on any one given trade. And I have to think about, what that time frame is, and I have to think about, what I'm going to do around that particular trade or that particular position over a period of time to make it work. That's a really tricky balance. I mean, it took me 5 years to scrape together $5,000, and I had to play a long-term game. I had to play a leaps game, which meant that I could only afford to buy one position, and I could maybe get away with getting 2 contracts, maybe. And it meant that I had to play like really low price stocks. Like $20, $25 stocks, because I couldn't afford a leap otherwise. So I had to be really super patient, and I had to wait for really specific spots to do things like roll that particular contract up to another strike, thereby putting profit in my pocket, looking for spots where I could write against my leaps so that I could collect premium, so that my position just didn't sit there and I wasn't getting paid, quote unquote interest, or letting decay take money away from me, time decay taking money away from me. I had to learn those subtleties, and I had to set things up so that when I was out running around, I would get an alert, right, at a specific price area that I was interested in. And then I could kind of, duck off into a hallway and adjust what I needed to adjust on my phone. And had I not been able to understand that this was going to be a long game at that account size, I the only thing that you come back to is like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to take $5,000 and throw it on red or black and see what happens. I couldn't do that, not from where I had been and to the point to where I was. If I had played that game, I would not be here. It would have been over, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think another thing that you're speaking to right now is, and you've been talking about it the whole time, is that you adapted what you had learned from these mentors to a way that worked for you, right? You weren't just taking this blanket strategy and saying, okay, I'm going to apply it, just do exactly what they're doing. I have to do that. And I think that is something that you see newer traders try and do. They say, well, I just need the formula. I need the playbook from this one guy, and then I'm good to go. Whereas pros are like, I learned this. I'm going to combine these all together in a way that works for me. And that for you is trading the posts, right?
Yeah.
That's the methodology you created.
Totally. I mean, between Lucci and my other mentor, they taught me how to fish. They didn't give me, here's your entry, here's your exit, right? Or today we're trading Netflix, or today we're trading Google, right? They didn't do that. They taught me how to fish, because I can't pick up the phone and call those guys in the middle of a trading day, right? Like I can't go sit with Lucci and watch him trade. First of all, he's gonna get aggravated, right? He's gonna be like, he's gonna be like, stop asking me questions, bro. I'm trying to trade. Right? Yep. So you have to learn how to fish. So I had to learn how to fish, right? I was like, I have to catch more fish if this is going to work. So that's what my journey was, and that's why I was finally able to to find that place. But it took a long time, and I got dragged behind a lot of freaking cars, right?
Right. I was thinking about this conversation that we're having right now in this series last night, and this like sort of framing of it popped into my head, and I want to run it by you, see if you think it's legit or bullshit. So beginner traders trade against themselves, pro traders trade against the market. And what I mean by that is that beginning traders, oftentimes we're talking to them, they're in our room, we're in one-on-one conversations with them, and you can just see that they're like kind of trading against ghosts in their head. Like they're just so warped, pulled into their own psychological experience and environment, that they're not really seeing the markets, the inputs that are catalyzing their behaviors. Their decisions are not the markets, it's their brain, it's their mind, right? It's their internal psychological dialogue. Versus pros have been able to find a way to be within themselves, calm themselves down, whatever, and just let the market dictate what they're doing. Would you say that that's true, or did I just give a long-winded bullshit?
No, I think I think that's true, and I think that even pro traders fight themselves every single day, right? The work that gets put in mostly is about understanding who you are and what triggers you, or what triggers your emotions in what spots, right? Because ultimately what we do isn't hard. You're clicking a mouse. That's the right. You click once to buy, you click once to sell, basically, and you either get paid or you don't. That's, that's not hard to do. What is hard to do is to understand yourself, to understand what's going on in the market. And, a handful of strategies, I don't want to make it sound so simple as, oh, you just need to know 1, 2, 3 and you're done.
Of course.
But really what it is do you have your game right? Is your mental game right? And is what you're seeing in front of you what you're looking for? So, you apply the right strategy to what the market is letting you do. You don't tell the market what strategy you're going to use. So right. that's part of it, right? So, you can have 30 strategies, but maybe only 2 of them work for you and your personality. But if you haven't been through that work and that exercise yet, how can you do it?
Yeah. Yeah. What did that work look like for you? That process of being like, oh, this situation is triggering to me. This, this is something I need to watch out for. Like, what was that process like?
I mean, I think that, and I still suffer with it, today, is that, trading can be intense, right? Like you can get into what you look for, and it is, depending upon what it is that you're trading, right? Like time frame or, risk, all of these different items come into play when you're clicking the mouse. So what is it that you expect? And if your emotion is bubbling over at whatever point in time, and you click the button and all of a sudden, like, you're sweating and, your parts pounding and, you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, you probably shouldn't be in the trade. So if you don't recognize those types of, either mental or physical reactions to what it is that you're doing, you have work to do, right? Now, yeah. Doing that work to get to a place to where you can be calm, et cetera, not everybody can do it. There are plenty of traders that come in that have, good brains, that are good at what they do, but psychologically they just can't get over that hump, and they ultimately can't make a transition, right? And right. And that's there's nothing wrong with that. They just need to play like a different game, and that's, hey, go back to being a long-term investor and go get really good at your job and find something else to help you get there, right? There's no shame in that. Not everybody can do this job. And then you've got people that we work with, like Chris, right? Like Chris is phenomenal at helping people learn more about themselves and giving his experiences to everybody so that they can help find their own answers to how they're going to click the mouse, right?
Right.
So that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that you, like, in the master course, it's essentially 23 classes now. We have classes that are specifically dedicated towards trading psychology. It's like, these classes are about trading psychology, and Chris teaches those, and Lucci teaches those, but I remember talking to you about when you started coming on and teaching more and more classes, and we were just getting such rave reviews in terms of the experience of the people were having learning from you. And I was like, what about you teaching some trading psychology classes? And what you essentially said was, like, for me, it's like baked into everything that I teach. Like, it's like when I teach trading the post, every single time I'm talking about trading, it's kind of inextricably linked to, the methods that, that I'm teaching. Like, you can't just like separate these things entirely into nice little buckets. It's all one big, flowing experience. So, I think I remember that conversation with you, and it kind of rung my bell with the way that you, the degree to which you have crafted your strategy to work for your psychological approach, for your psychological makeup, like what works for you. And I think that that's something that pros do, that we certainly focus a lot on the master course, is teaching people how to do that. So it's important.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. I like to be as calm as possible. And the way for me to do that with, obviously, we get into depth of how the mechanics work. But for me, it was like one of the biggest lessons was when you shop for a house and you don't have a lot of money, you don't look for the nicest house on the best block. You look for something in the middle, right?
Right.
It's similar to what we do in trading the post. And there can be periods of time where even what we talk about doesn't allow us an opportunity to do what we want to do, which is why it can be incredibly painful and frustrating at moments when markets have been doing what they've been doing, looking for a good buy on something, right? But I don't want to buy something that's in, let's say, the upper third or the upper quarter of its trading range. I want to find something that's quality, that's been beaten up, so that if I do buy it and I don't have a lot of money, I know that my downside is pretty limited because it's already been trashed, right? Yeah. And I'm not talking about a company that's about to go out of business. I'm talking about you miss earnings, right? Or somebody screwed some product up, and it needs to be rehauled. I'm not talking about like, here's this Chinese company that has to restate earnings, or we find out that it's a fraud, right? Like we're not doing that. We're looking for quality that's on sale. And that helped me a lot, knowing that when I got up to go to work, that what I was invested in had a very low probability of getting beaten up anymore, because it already had been beaten up. And what we were looking for was a turnaround at that time, right? And that's right. It's still the same thing that we do today. Just given the market environment, we just haven't had a ton of opportunities to do that type of activity. We've had a handful, and we've had some really, really nice plays that come out of it. The other question is, when you come into an environment like that, are you patient enough to wait for that type of an opportunity? And that can drive some guys crazy too. And they're like, this is dumb. It doesn't work. You're stupid. This opportunity doesn't exist. And it's because that the individual couldn't be patient and wait. Right.
Right.
That's a lot of what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to get into a Q&A section here in a second. So I see a couple questions that are in the Q&A area. If that would really help me to sort them, if you all want to just throw them into the Q&A area. I think for everybody who's watching this, one of the things you're probably picking up on is that Ranch, especially for somebody who can be in kind of do the dance with something as wild and dynamic as the market, he's very methodical in his thinking. He can be very structured. He can break things down in terms of, okay, here's the foundation, here's the next level, here's the next level, here's the next level. And that's one of the main reasons why we brought him on, years ago, to start helping us teach classes in the master course, why he teaches most of the options section in the master course now, and why we spun off his trading the post room as a standalone area where you can learn and have direct exposure to him, and why in the master course he also teaches his trading the post methodology in addition to everything else that you learn in terms of tape and options and trading psychology. So if that's something that y'all are interested in, the next master course starts in 2 weeks. So that's one of the reasons why we're doing this series. It's a lead up to the next master course. You get to learn directly from Ranch. I mean, he teaches, I don't know, 9 classes now. He teaches a lot of classes, in the master course.
That.
Yeah. So he's front and center in our flagship educational experience for a very good reason. And, what we talked about, what we've gone through in terms of this mentorship experience, this opportunity to learn from somebody who has put thought and effort into how they're delivering this information to you and how it can best be absorbed, and then giving you opportunity to interact directly with them to learn and understand the nuances of what they're saying. that's the experience that we've created. That's what our whole company is dedicated towards, towards doing. So if y'all are interested in that, you just go to sanglucci.com/M as in Mary C. You can learn a lot more about the master course. Again, it's starting up in 2 weeks. So the next live session will kick off then. You get lifetime access to every single future live session, plus access to all the recordings of the classes. We got people who join from all around the world and different time zones and stuff like that. We've built it so that you can get a ton out of it, everything out of it from the recordings as well. You get 2 months free in the Steam room with Jay. You get, I think we give a week of Trading the Post access, Ranch. I think that's where we're at right now.
7 days.
You get 7 days of access with Ranch in the Trading the Post room. You're a member for life, so you can come back as often as you want to the master course chat, to those classes, to those future live sessions. So there's nowhere else in the market where you're going to learn all the skill sets that we teach, online for $3,000. It's just not in the cards.
So Charlie, if I can pile onto what you're saying, that was one of the reasons that when I first signed up, that I did it, was because I didn't believe you, was that you said you can continue to come back for classes. Nobody does that. If there are other rooms that do that, it's changed. But when I came to you, I didn't believe that I could actually come back. And I've come back for every master course since the very first one that I've signed up for. And even though I'm at where I'm at, every single course, when I sit there and listen to Lucci and he goes through the tape reading portion, I always learn something new. I find some subtlety that helps me. Yeah.
I think that's a big point. I mean, these guys like Lucci, Ron still learns new stuff about tape from Lucci, and Lucci's still learning about flow from Jay, and they're all teaching one another new things all the time, just in the same way that the biggest traders on a trading floor would teach one another things and learn from they would learn from one another. So that's definitely the dynamic that we have going on, and it's gratifying for us to see people come back who bought like in 2016, I think when we first started officially sort of teaching what we called the master course, who are coming back, and they're successful traders doing it on their own, but they're like, I just kind of want to see the way that Ranch is talking about options in this new market environment, like with what's going on right now. So there's a couple people in the chat who fall into that category. So we are doing a special. You can save $250 with coupon code SLMC 250 off. So we're going to run that up until the end of till when the class starts, which is October 19th, I believe, Tuesday, October 19th. So give that a try. And obviously hit us up, contact@sanglucci.com, and the help chat on any of our websites. We'll get you to one of our guys, and we'll get your questions answered. So let's answer some questions. Got one in here for those people. This is a tough question. This is like what we teach. Some of these questions, it's like, well, this is the reason we have the course, because we could teach class upon class about this. But for those who struggle with being patient, waiting for the trade, Ranch, how do you recommend they transform themselves to being calm and patient, as opposed to a degenerate gambler asking for a friend?
So that can be, I can tell you what my experience was. So my experience was that because I had been beaten up so badly, I basically had to look at the market and where I was and say, there's nothing that I can do. I have to wait for some type of pullback. So I ignored what was going on day to day and simply waited. And when the moment arrived, I knew that I needed to start doing something. Now, I'm not somebody who's ever going to say we can pick bottoms or time bottoms or do any of that kind of thing, but I recognize when the market is in distress and when it's, when it's giving opportunity for longer term. So for me, what I had to do was ignore the day to day, because scalping and coming in and potentially having every day be a lottery paycheck is very seductive, right? It's a very difficult thing to ignore, knowing that every day that you come in could be the day that you hit a massive home run, right? But if you have that mentality all the time, you're just going to burn through what you have. You got to put yourself in a situation so that you're able to take those shots, as opposed to I'm waiting for the shot. You want to wait for an opportunity so that you can get in and build. And that can be really hard for people to accept, really difficult.
And David, I think one thing that, that's Ranch's, that's how it worked for Ranch. That's inherent in his statement. Lucci, if you ask him that same question, has a different response. How does he find calm and ground himself, when he's trading? It's like he feels confidence in his read on tape to a degree where he's like, all I have to do is just read this tape and it will tell me what to do. That's it. So everybody had, and Jay would say, similar thing about flow and sentiment. And, we're going to teach you all those skill sets. When you emerge from the master course, then the challenge in front of you, which we help you to take on, is, okay, what is, what's the thing that really resonates most with me? What am I really going to, go to work with every day?
Time frame and risk.
Yeah. I was extremely interested when Ranchero said he was mentored to learn from a former market maker. I've always been interested in that side of the game. What would you say were the key aha moments you had while picking that individual's brain and learning from them?
Well, God, like the most basic things were, I didn't understand, like after all of the training and securities crap that I had been through, I didn't understand what the Greeks were in options and or how they worked. And once I got a few key concepts understood and then combined that with technical levels, which I didn't understand either, that was something that this market maker taught me as well, was, hey, listen, there's a reason that these moving averages exist, and here are those reasons why. And then when you get there, depending upon, again, your risk and your time frame, this is how you select options and their strikes appropriately to give you the best opportunity or the best probability of success. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be successful, but it's stacking probability so that you can take a chance in that particular bet, right? So that was a huge aha moment for me, was understanding the time, the place, and how to select the strike. That was a really, really big deal for me.
Awesome. Any advice for someone who has a good process, was able to nearly quadruple a 25K account in a few months, but then subsequently blew 95% of those profits in a few weeks? And he says, small cap trader.
Small caps are tough. Like so small caps are, you have, first of all, you have the right environment for small caps right now. They've done extremely well. But there were times, when I was a lot more junior in this environment, where small caps just didn't work, right? You had to play quality, or you had to play names or sectors that were getting attention. And then you went through this whole thing of rotation. And if you didn't figure out, one day tech was on and the next day industrials were on, and you didn't understand how to piece that together, you just sat there and you're just like a puppet, right? You're like, oh my God, it's up one day, I got to get out because it's down the next day. Like, it was very, very difficult. So it's not uncommon to hear a story of somebody who's done that and made the money and then subsequently lost it, because a lot of times what happens is that they either don't have somebody who's tapping them on the shoulder saying, you did great, take at least the minimum of your what you started with, and plus a little more, and put it off to the side if you're going to keep playing the game you're playing. That way, if you do blow up, you've got something that's still left, right? But right. To recover after you've taken that kind of a loss, I've lived that, and my way of climbing out of it was, I went through some horrible personal stuff, and I scraped, and I went through a lot of sacrifice. So I would say that don't repeat your past behaviors. Start to look for this is first of all, recognize and understand what you did wrong and start to change those behaviors. That's the first place to start, is to work your way out of that.
Well said. This is a great question. I don't think I've ever asked you this. What is the trade that you're most proud of? If you have one, maybe you don't have a single one.
Okay. Well, okay. So I reference this all the time because it was part of the beta for when we did Trading the Post, right? So right. It wasn't I mean, personally, it was great. But what was also great about it was that the individuals who were involved in our beta program of Trading the Post when we first started this were basically guinea pigs, right? You and Lucci had said, okay, Ron, we think we understand what you're talking about. Let's give this an opportunity to see if it will work. I don't know. We had like what 10 guys that were willing to come along for the ride at no cost, basically. And what we did was we found Biogen, and we found Biogen after it had really had the crap beat out of it. And we were able to play that for like the 9 or 10 months that it stayed in the doldrums. And we applied everything that I taught. And we got to a point where they had finally got the ship turned around and everybody was in the ride, and everybody had their position paid for. And then the day after they announced earnings, the stock went up $90. That was a really good day. And there were a handful of guys that were along for that beta that changed their investing lives. So yeah. That was a really, really good moment.
That's pretty dope. That's a pretty good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got a question about like, how do you minimize time decay when you swing a long option?
That's easy stuff.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you're minimizing time decay, especially like if you're in a leap, is buying. First of all, you start with the right strike at the right level, because if you buy at the right strike at the right level and you leg into your position, quarter positions at a time, leaving room for you to either add at appropriate levels or so that you can write against your position, mitigates time decay.
There you go. Jimmy, you're asking like, can we ask any kind of question? Yeah, any question you want. I mean, he's not necessarily going to answer it.
I might not answer it.
Yeah, he might not answer it. He's got the right to say no, but we ask away. Any advice for someone that wants to make scalping their main strategy?
So in Trading the Post, we do, and that's another thing is, do you know yourself, and are you able to be a scalp trader? If the answer is yes, then, we do many different types of trades and trade setups. So in my room, it's a focus on long-term. We're using the leap strategy. We have a crash protection strategy that we use to protect your long-term portfolio. That's a hedge. We also do midterm swing trades. So anywhere between, let's say, a couple of weeks to 3 months out. And then we have a few day trades, and then we have scalp trades. We work on all of it. Plus every Wednesday, I give out 3 or 4 condors. So, this is a room where we have basically like 5 different services packed into one. What your job is to figure out who you are as a trader and focus on that area that you're good at. I do see some guys come in who don't know who they are yet and are trying to figure it out and flip from one strategy to another, and that messes them up. But if you're a scalper, then we had some amazing scalps today, just on Tesla, and we have some very specific techniques that we use in combination with tape reading that work really well. Some days we don't do well, some days we do really well, and today was a really well day.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely a lot of people who go through, the master course and they say, all right, tape is going to be my way to scalp. Like, I want to scalp. I want to trade in that sort of short time frame, and tape is going to be my guide to that. Some integrate flow into that sentiment from Jay, and some don't. So there's definitely, if you want to scalp or if you want to swing, the master courses I think give you a ton of benefit on for longer time horizons. Certainly the trading the post piece to it is particularly well suited for that. But I would say the bulk of the master course is really well suited for anybody who wants to, scalp up to swing trading for, a couple weeks. And if you, we'll leave it at that. All right, let's get a couple more here. A great question. Lucci has talked about, and I've struggled with learning how to lose, since you will always have losing trades. Is that something you had to learn? And if so, can you talk about how you overcame that?
Yeah, I mean, so, there's a couple of different ways. One is, are you trading equity or you're trading options? With equity, I have much tighter, and I don't use stop losses. And the reason I don't use stop losses is because one of the things that you start to learn and recognize is when whatever it is that you're trading is in the midst of a stop hunt, right? So if you recognize you're in the midst of a stop hunt and you have a stop order, you're going to get blown out all the time. So I have different parameters to when I blow out of an equity trade versus an option trade. An option trade can a lot of times require you to take a lot more heat and be willing to take, let's say, a 30 or a 40% drawdown, as opposed to, trading something with equity where you're like, well, look, I'm going to blow out of this if it reaches a specific level, and I'm not willing to take any more than, let's say, a $200 or $300 or $500 loss, depending upon your position size. But the subtlety between understanding when you're trading options, your time frame and what your tolerance is for the drawdown is a learned skill.
Well said. Let's get one or two more here. Do you recommend a minimum account size and margin accounts?
Well, I mean, okay. So first of all, I can't recommend anything because I'm not licensed. But
well said.
That being said, it depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to be at home and you want to, you're like, I need this money to live on, and this is what I'm going to do as my business. The more that you have, the easier that it becomes. Can it be done on a $5,000 or a $10,000 account or a $25,000 account? It's going to be really, really difficult, right? It's going to be very hard. I would say that, is there a magic number? I don't know that there's a magic number. 250K in the hands of somebody skilled can make that work very easily. In the hands of somebody who's just learning, I don't know, maybe not, right? Can you get away with 100K? I mean, with where I'm at, I could take 25K or 50K and be okay, but I would still need ramp time to get it to a level to where I could, make it work for me. But I don't know. I don't know that there's a magic number. Everybody's situation is different. I think broadly speaking, like 100K, if you're going to sit at home and try and make a go of this, if you have some experiences, is probably the bare minimum of where you need to be. If you're the guy that's got 5 or 10 grand and you're okay with playing the longer term game, this can work for you also. You just have to play a patient game. If you're not patient, you can't do that. It's going to be really hard.
Yeah. I mean, if you're saying I'm going to do this professionally, that I'm going to do this is my sole source of income, and you're under PDT, oftentimes you're putting yourself in a really difficult position.
It's really hard.
You have to wait, unless what you need to live is extremely low, which sometimes, there's young guys and women who have just graduated college and they're like, I'm going to live off $1,000 a month and I'm going to do this, and you can do that. And there's definitely people who come into the course who have a $5,000 account, and there's a good number of them, and they're just like, hey, I'm not trying to do this full time right now. I'm trying to pull in, learn and get to the point where I can, pull in a couple grand a month and then build this and get over PDT.
Be sustainable.
Yeah, be sustainable. Yeah. And then once you're over PDT, that opens up doors. And then once you get up to, in the range of what Ranch is talking about, 250 grand, that also your portfolio margin, that opens up more doors. Like, there's tiers to strategies that you can execute that, change as your account size grows. But It's a very
And you
personal way.
do need margin at some point to apply certain strategies, and being above PDT, it becomes a lot more critical, right? So that's 25K, and rules have changed recently where if you fall below it, and your broker calls you out for it, for violating the PDT rule, they can basically put you into a cash account and not give you margin back, forcing you to leave that firm and go somewhere else and try and reestablish another margin account somewhere else. And that's a pain in the ass.
Right. Yeah. You know, Jimmy, and you're asking about like, what's a reasonable expectation for return and stuff like that. You know, that's basically an impossible question to answer. You know, we can't sit here and say, well, you got 25 grand, you go through the course, and you should be able to do 5 grand a month. It's like, there are people who emerge and they take $25,000 accounts to, you know, to the moon real, you know, in a short period of time. And there's people who struggle for a while because they're just still picking this stuff up, or maybe they have personal, you know, stuff, psychological stuff that's coming up. So it's, you know,
it happens. It happens. It can be done. We have members who came in and did what we were talking about. They were patient, and, you know, it was like a gift when the market pulled because of the pandemic. And we had traders who stayed patient, who had dry powder, and we don't buy at the bottom. We buy on the way back up. And we had I don't know how many, we had 2 or 3 that bought some things in some spots with like 20, 30 grand. And within 3 or 4 months, we had a couple of guys that were well over $1 million, right? Like, it's not the norm, but it does happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of that question, the answer to that question depends on what's happening in the market. You know, if those,
yes.
if it's putting up fat pitches that you can recognize.
Yes.
Mike is asking some questions about the master course. So working full-time and trading part-time equities, trying to get consistently profitable. Are the classes recorded, and is it possible, you know, to do if you can't attend live? Yes, absolutely. We always have people who, you know, a good portion of the people who take the course can't attend the live classes. They come into the room whenever they can. They watch the recordings. You know, we've created this experience such that it will be of immense value to you, even if you can't join the live classes. Obviously, it's great if you can be there live, ask questions, but
I mean, that's what I had to do. I couldn't attend all of the live classes. I was, you know, I'd be out on the road, and I would have to wait for the recordings to get posted, and then I would just listen to the recording. So yeah.
So yes, absolutely. You know, is it better to wait for the next course? Obviously you can wait, but anymore we do these once a year live. So, you know, we used to do these much more frequently. Now we do them once a year. It's a much bigger sort of beast to get launched, and we're just not running as many of these anymore. So if you want to wait for the next live session, you know, you're going to be waiting a year. Also, is it beneficial with very limited options knowledge? Absolutely. We have people who come in who, you know, just don't have any background in options. So you get an introduction to options class, which is purely recorded, that kind of gives you your baseline, your foundation. And then, you know, we pick it up from there. So we have a lot of people who are coming in with no options knowledge. There was one up here, you know, Adrian's asking a question. I think this is specifically about trading the post and not about master course generally, but trading the post. You know, can your principles be applied to index options as opposed to single names?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're actually going to start doing that at the beginning of the new year. We'll be opening a SPY position at the beginning of the new year, and mostly because we haven't had a ton of opportunities. So the SPY next year is going to be a position in the trading the post room.
Got you. So you know, just so everybody is clear, you guys can go. So I'm showing you guys like a Zoom screen. You guys can go to sanglucci.com/MC. It will take you to this page, and you can learn about the master course. You can sign up. You can use the coupon code SLMC 250 off to save $250. That works for payment plans. That works for single time payment. You can do that on this page. You can use this little help icon to ask us any questions. You can set up a call with our boy Spencer, who will walk you through any questions you have on the phone. And then you can also, if you want to just go straight into the trading the post methodology, which is, you know, a piece of what you learn in the master course, you can sign up for a 7-day trial, free trial to trading the post, which is Ranch's room. It's his strategy that he developed kind of bringing everything together that he learned into one, or as he said, sort of 5 services in one. You can go and sign up for a trial, get in there and have that experience. So, Ranch, I think we're going to cut it at that. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering all these questions and taking us through this. And I hope you all will join me and Lucci for the last installment the last episode in this series next week after the close, Tuesday at 4:15. We're going to bring it home. So that'll be fun. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for being here.
Thanks, Charlie.
See ya.
Later.